Hey, this is This Week in Self-Hosted. I'm your host, Ethan Shawley. This week, I am joined by Jason Crabtree, the admin of the DMV Mastodon instance. Jason, normally we just jump right into things, but I do want to stop here for just a second and chat a little bit with you about your role as the admin of the Mastodon instance for DMV, or for people who aren't aware, the Washington metropolitan area, I guess is what you would consider it. Can you explain to myself and others just what being an admin entails?
Sure. Well, first, it's not a Department of Motor Vehicles instance, which I get a lot of jokes about that. But yeah, I host a Mastodon server for the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. I'm the sole admin and moderator. So I spun up the server 2 years ago. Been happily running it ever since, and it's been fun. I've met a lot of interesting people and provided them a way to get onto a regional Mastodon instance.
Yeah, cool. So I talk about the Fediverse a lot in my content, and for a lot of people, it's not necessarily self-hosted. For instance, I have a Fediverse presence, but I don't host it myself. But it is very much adjacent to self-hosted software. Not only can it be self-hosted, but it goes alongside with kind of the privacy fight people are having right now with
Yeah.
big companies, and obviously social media is very relevant right now. So I'm really excited to have you on. I think you're going to have some cool perspectives on some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. So, with that being said, let's jump into it. I actually want to jump into the first news topic I had in our show notes here. Actually, some more Threads activity in its integration with the Fediverse. For those who don't know, Threads is Meta's or Facebook slash Instagram's Twitter clone for all intents and purposes. And in the last year, they've been doing things, or they've been enabling things to allow integration with folks who are part of the Fediverse. And so just this week, they kind of turned another thing on that essentially allows their own users to follow people from Fediverse servers who have interacted with other threads, users, or posts. I'm really interested, Jason, on your thoughts on this, especially as an admin of a Fediverse instance. I know I kind of have my own thoughts, and I think at the end of the day, I'm not sure I'm qualified to really speak to the implications of this, but really interested in hearing what you might have to say.
So I'm in favor of it. I know it's a controversial topic on Mastodon these days and has been for quite some time since the news came out. But I'm in favor of connecting all of these networks together and then just handling the moderation as we would normally instead of our own system. So I'm happy to see that they are taking the next steps necessary for Threads users to actually follow Mastodon users and other Fediverse users.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat you are. I feel like it can only be good letting the Fediverse interact with more users from other platforms when we're talking about growth and encouraging participation. I'm not sure I quite understand these security implications or what this means for Meta having access to Fediverse data they might not have easily had access to before. That's probably a separate conversation, but I think that's only a good thing. With that being said, I want to pivot because there are actually a couple of things in the news I wanted to make sure we hit today. The second thing I have, then I'm going to pass it over for one of the topics you brought with Jason, is actually a new router that was announced this week, which took me back. And I know from our conversation before we started recording, also took you back a little bit. Um, OpenWrt, which is router firmware that's been around forever for
Mhm.
people to install on their own routers and kind of give them freedom and flexibility that you wouldn't normally get with either a router you'd buy at the store or one your ISP provides. The Software Freedom Conservancy has worked with the OpenWrt project to announce and just released, I think, recently, a new router that is running OpenWrt. A lot of cool things about it. It's apparently unbrickable based on how everything's flashed. And the Banana Pi team, if anyone's familiar with that hardware, is actually in charge of manufacturing and distributing it. I do have another link here I'm going to pull up. The article I have in the newsletter doesn't actually have a photo of the router. So I'm going to pull something up from The Verge here that has a photo of it. I will say I like the simplicity of the design, but it leaves a little bit to be desired.
It's very utilitarian.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I agree. And almost like it looks like something I would have purchased like 10 or 15 years ago when I was also deploying OpenWrt on one of my
It's
routers as well.
it's definitely a throwback. It looks more like something you would put in, you know, a closet than, you know, out for display. But we're used to seeing these flashy, futuristic looking routers nowadays. I think that this is quite jarring when you see it, but I kind of like the simplicity of it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's funny, I'm running OpenSense right now as my kind of router and firewall, and I
Hmm.
run it on Hardware Protectly, which is a hardware company that is very popular in that like community. And it's not that different from what we're looking at. I think it's the
Hmm.
color blue that's throwing me off.
Hmm.
Something about that just feels like a little more like mid 2000s to me than
It reminds me
2024.
of the old Linksys router that we were talking about just before the show, the old WRT 54G, the
Yes.
blue and black Linksys router that we used to flash this firmware on years and years ago. So I kind of like it for that aspect. I also enjoy that they are selling it in two different forms. You can get it for $89 in the case or $68 with just a logic board.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's really cool, and obviously the optionality is great. And sorry, I'm still stuck on the color. I think you're right. They must be going for that throwback with the Linksys router you had referenced.
Maybe.
There must be a connection there. With that being said, I do want to kick it over to you. I know you brought some topics as well that have been on your radar as far as stuff in the news, whether it's self-hosted or adjacent to self-hosting. So I'll let you talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, so I saw recently on Reddit that Microsoft is retiring Azure Lab Services. They have a complete guide up here on the shutdown process and what it means. But basically, this was a virtual lab service that you could spin up a VM in and get a whole network of devices going up in an Azure lab. It was really nice. A lot of people were using this for testing, and I don't think for permanent hosting, but for testing and playing around. So that is going away. Uh, let's see, it will be retired on June 28th, 2027. So there's plenty of time to migrate out. And then later on here in the show, we've got a guide to sort of setting up your own self-hosted version of that.
Yeah, so Jason, I know you are an IT guy yourself. Is this? I had mentioned earlier I had never heard of this until you brought this up, so I saw in the show notes and had to do some digging. Is this popular? Are a lot of people using these services?
I don't know that it's extremely popular. I know a few people who have used this in the workplace for testing before they roll it out into production or even into their own on-prem testing labs. So I think it was a good option for that. But I don't know how many self-hosters, as far as hosting at home, use it. But I know there's at least a few people. There were quite a few comments on Reddit regarding this news.
Yeah, yeah, and self-hosting extends just beyond home labs as well. There are people who are doing it from an enterprise standpoint, so I can see how that might be helpful. The last thing I wanted to touch on before we jumped into software updates and new software, I don't have a link here. I have some content later in the newsletter. Some YouTubers reacted to this. Linus Tech Tips released a video this week talking about an operating system they're invested in. I don't, admittedly, I don't know how deep their investment goes, but it's called HexOS. And I saw it pop up in all of my news feeds, so I know people were talking about it.
Hmm.
I watched the video. I watched what other people were saying about it, and I think I kind of agreed with where they had landed. And it's that it's more tailored, I think, for beginners or
It
people
is.
who don't
Yeah.
want the complexity of drive pools and stuff like that, almost like
Hmm.
an unraid.
Hmm.
Um,
Very similar. Yeah.
yeah, but maybe not quite as functional as Unraid. I remember
Hmm.
reading a comment that you can't mix drives of different sizes, which I
Yeah.
think is a big deal for a lot of people, myself included, by the way. So it'll just be interesting to see how that evolves as that move forward. Were you able to catch that news, Jason?
Yeah, I did see that. I was looking through some of their product documentation and marketing materials, and it looks interesting, like you said, for sort of a more amateur or beginner home labber or self-hoster. So it could be good for some people to get started. Hopefully, the product does become a little more flexible, so you can hack it a little bit more as time goes on. But they have a $199 per server early access lifetime fee right now, so that's not bad for a lifetime license.
No, I don't think so. Especially at a time when lifetime licenses seem to be going away.
True.
Um, Yeah, that's interesting, and it feels weird. Like it's early enough that I almost feel bad critiquing it
Hmm.
in front of other people. I guess give it some time to mature, and maybe I'll try running it myself at some point.
Yeah, it's being released into a market that has a lot of products that people are very passionate about and have been using for a long time. So I think they're going to have trouble getting a foothold in that market. But it might be something that more experienced self-hosters recommend to friends and family who are just getting started.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with that. People are very passionate about their operating systems.
They are.
I have learned that the hard way in the past. So we're going to pivot to software updates. I have two that stood out to me this week that I want to chat a little bit about. And then, Jason, I saw you had one in particular. I'm going to kick off with Immich, everyone's favorite photo software, or at least a lot of people's favorite photo software that's still somehow in beta without a proper release, but everyone's using it anyway. They had a couple cool things actually just come through today. We're recording this on Thursday evening this week. HDR video support on mobile, automatic local URL switching depending on your Wi-Fi network. So you can, if you'd like to use, point your mobile app to maybe the local IP address and the port of Immich when you're at home versus using your qualified domain name, you can do that now. And they also have a couple other things. One of them being hide users from search, and I struggled a little bit to understand what the use case was. And I think in the release notes, they talked a little bit about it's for people who run public instances of Immich and might not want all the users to be able to see each other because they have no relation or context within amongst each other and who each other are. But I can't imagine. I'm curious as to how many people are hosting public instances of Immich. And I had this thought in my mind. I think I know what people use Immich for, and I'm not going to
Hmm.
say it out loud on this show. And this feels like it's like another step to maybe it, lending itself to that more so than I think what they're saying in the release notes it's doing
I
here.
think you might be
But
right. Yeah. When you first said hide users from search, I was thinking of an option like if you have an ex-wife or an ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend or whoever, and you don't want to see photos of them when you search, you could, hide them from view. But this seems to be for a different purpose altogether.
that that would be great functionality though. That would
Yeah,
be interesting.
but it does have some nice quality of life updates. So the local URL switching is really important.
Yeah, that's great. The other update I wanted to call it this week was a piece of software that actually just popped up on my radar very recently. Jellyplist, which is just essentially a tool to sync playlists from Spotify to Jellyfin for those who stream media with Jellyfin. Their update this week I thought was super interesting. Spotify announced last week that they were changing their API, and we're seeing this happen a lot, especially with AI and companies maybe wanting to take advantage of the monetary value of their publicly available data. And so they released some updates to their API that restricted what developers could access. And so this impacted this new Jellyplist application that I've seen in the newsletter the last couple of weeks. And it was just really cool to see how fast they pivoted to accommodate those API changes. And as they worked to do that, they actually built essentially a new plugin system to accommodate Spotify's new API that's also going to allow them to potentially implement other third-party services for syncing with more than just Spotify. Maybe it's
Yeah,
Tidal or whatever, Apple Music, whatever other people might be using. I thought that was really cool and really interesting and
yeah.
very speedy at how fast that update was delivered.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it says a lot about the abilities of the open source community to just, when they hit a wall, they create something to jump over it. So it's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a lot of people, I think that's what this is about. Like these practices that we're fighting Spotify on. That's why we self-host in the first place. So we don't have to worry about what happens to my app if, the Spotify decides they don't want me using parts of it or whatnot. So
Yeah, there's the word of the year. I won't say it on the show. I don't know how that would go, but the word of the year, that tends to happen to these products. A lot of people left their self-hosted music solutions for streaming services years ago when it became more convenient. But I see a lot more people going back to that self-hosted option or buying individual songs and albums because of the services are becoming so much more restrictive.
mm-hmm. Yeah, if I'm thinking of the same word of the year you are, I feel like that's been the word of the year for the last like 3 or 4
It feels like
years.
it. Yeah, it feels
It
like it.
it's a common theme, that's for sure. But hey, I know you have some updates you want to talk about, so I'm going to kick it over to you, Jason, and let you chat about those.
Yeah, so I personally have been considering options for storing documents online and storing them, in digital form. So I came across this thing called Receipt Wrangler, and it looks like they pushed an update recently that makes it easier to run in a containerized environment. And they also pushed a paperless integration design update. Integration for paperless has been designed. Once implemented, users will be able to push receipts, both images and data, to paperless, as well as pull documents from paperless into Receipt Wrangler. So if you run a paperless server, that's going to allow you to push and pull documents between the two products seamlessly. So Receipt Wrangler looks like a pretty cool product that specifically allows you to upload documents that are receipts and keep track of those kinds of things. So that's something that I would definitely be interested in, and I'm going to keep an eye on in the future.
Yeah, you should absolutely check it out. I covered it earlier this year in the content spotlight in one of my newsletters. I really liked it when it popped up on my radar, and I've had several correspondences with the developer who seems great, and it's great software. I feel like it was one of the first self-hosted ones to really hop
Mm-hmm.
onto the AI train, and I think it's done a really great job at that. And I think tracking receipts, and managing them is a great area that lends itself to proper AI use. I think sometimes
Yeah,
people stick AI into things that might not necessarily need it, but I think this is a really good example.
yeah,
And I'm also a paperless user, and it was really cool to see this pop up as well. That the design is coming, the actual functionality hasn't been implemented, but it's really cool that we now have these two pieces of software that'll be able to chat with each other.
yeah. It looks great. It looks really well fleshed out, and these updates make it really nice. It's easier to host and work with your other products too as well. So
Yeah, exactly. So, a handful of breaking changes this week, more than I feel like I normally have. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but if you're running software and this is your update weekend, if Friday or Saturday, Sunday, the first of the month is usually when you perform your updates, check out the newsletter, come to the breaking changes section. There are a handful that you'll need to either perform some manual migration steps or add an environment variable to your compose command or Docker command or compose file. They're in here as well. Going to jump to new software, new, and I'll say new software because I have some software launches that I want to chat about, but we also have some software that's not new, just new on our radar that we're going to chat a little bit about this week as well. The first one I had picked out was Lurker. I see a lot of self-hosted front ends for various services come through. YouTube, I think, is the most popular. Reddit is right after that, and
Mhm.
Lurker is essentially that. It calls itself a client. It feels like maybe a little more, a little closer to an actual front end than, say, if I'm downloading like a Reddit app on my phone and using that as a client.
Mhm.
Um, but I really like it because it's a read-only client. A lot of people want these things for privacy, but the issue you run into when you use front ends and you're not signing with user accounts is that you don't get the personalization that you would from signing and using an account. What I liked about Lurker is you do get that. It's anonymous, but you can still uh, track your own subreddits to follow. You can specify what you do and don't want to see. You get all of the bells and whistles that come along with that. You just don't get the user profile and interaction aspect
Mhm.
of it where you're commenting and posting things. I thought that was notable and really cool. I'm going to be spinning that up this weekend. I'm a big Reddit user, so excited to try that out. And then another application popped up on my radar, shared on Reddit this week, and it's actually also the content spotlight in this week's newsletter. It's called Fli.so, and it's a URL shortening service. So people who frequently share long and complex links use things like this to create custom short URLs that they can easily share with people. They can send it to their mom or dad or text whoever, and people can easily remember it. I don't know that there's anything super special about this versus a lot of the other great options that also exist, but it stuck out to me just because I think it has a really gorgeous design, and I'm a sucker for well-designed software and applications. And scrolling through, like I wouldn't have guessed before that I'm drawn to a beige, like brownish
Right.
color scheme. And I scroll through this, I'm like, I love this. They have their own hosted service, but there's also a self-hosted version where you get all the features if you self-host it yourself. So recommend checking that out if anyone needs that functionality. And with that, Jason, I will turn it over to you to chat about some of the things you found this week.
Hey, thanks. So I recently found this application called Huly. It's Huly, and no, it's not the made-up company from the show Silicon Valley, but it looks like it's a really nice Notion alternative. I know a lot of people have been leaving Notion recently for various reasons, but yeah, this looks like a really great, easily hostable in Docker uh, Notion alternative.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw this pop up earlier as well. Someone on Reddit was asking about Notion alternatives, and I've written before about them, and I'm not sure how. I have not heard of this before this week. This was also new to me, so I'm going to have to check it out. There are a lot of self-hosted alternatives to Notion
There are.
that I think a lot of them are great. I'm not sure that any of them are can really be true Notion replacements.
Hmm.
Notion just has a ton of functionality, and it's hard to
Yeah.
achieve that in projects. So I'll be anxious to see what this looks like. Of course, I pulled up the GitHub repo here, and there are no screenshots.
No screenshots, but
So
yeah, I will probably spin this up at some point here soon in the future and give it a shot. I've been looking for something to sort of contain notes and information and organize my life a little bit. So this might be a good way to do that. So I'm
yeah,
definitely going to spin this up.
and it looks like it also has single sign-on
It
via
does.
OpenID Connect, which self-hosters love. So
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
all of you out there, another bonus for this.
GitHub OAuth as well.
Oh yeah, I'm probably missing that. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Let's see. So the next one I added to the list here was a product called Zipline, which funny that you had brought up that Fli.so service this time because was just looking for a URL shortener earlier this week, and I spun up an instance of Zipline, which I'd never heard of before. It flew under my radar until recently, but it's a really nice. It's actually primarily a file upload server, image and file upload server, but it also doubles as a link shortener and tracking for links. So I spun that up, and I've been creating some links and sharing them out in places where I need to know how many people have clicked on it, or in places where I need to reduce the amount of text that's in the space, certain areas on the blog and things like that. So this has been really great, and it's got a really handy dashboard that gives you the total space you're using, how many links you're using, you know click through recent files, things like this. So this is a really nice service that I'm looking forward to exploring more.
Yeah, I haven't. Uh, so I discovered this a couple months ago, and I haven't deployed it myself. But it's almost like a Swiss Army knife of
Yeah.
different self-hosted functionality. And when I talk about it, like if there's an update in the newsletter, I never know how to refer to it. It's like,
Hmm.
is it file sharing? Is it URL shortening? Is it
Yeah,
something else? It does a lot of great things. And by the way, it also has a really nice looking interface.
it does.
I know
Yeah.
that's what stuck out to me initially.
Yeah. Some nice
So,
built-in theming as well.
oh yeah, oh that's
It
nice.
it has cat poochin, which I'm always there for that.
Yeah, that what is it? That the Nord theme, and I'm like a Dracula theme
Yeah,
guy
it's
myself, if
got
anyone
Dracula,
knows.
it's got Nord, it's got a couple different cat poochin color themes, so it's got all that built in, which is just true to my heart.
No, that's great. All of the classics people look for. So there you go. Another reason to spin up Zipline this weekend. Um, so going to shift to the last section we're going to chat about during today's show, and that is the community content section. A couple interesting things going on here. Just to bring them to everyone's attention, I won't spend any time chatting about them. The first one is a blog post from a a person I follow and chat with a lot. Actually, they're going to start contributing to my site with some writing a little bit. Akash, he writes a lot of great things for self-hosters who are looking to get into various aspects of self-hosting. And so he's written one this week about setting up Caddy with automatic certs, also leveraging Cloudflare, which is all common things people are looking to do. So if that's something you want to tackle this week, recommend checking out his article. There is also um, an open source survey that I have in the newsletter here. A couple different entities coming together to facilitate that. Um, Please contribute to that. Always love pitching surveys and encouraging people to submit their feedback, because it's such a great way for developers and other creators to really know and engage with the public. But the thing I wanted to talk about before I kick it over to you, then Jason, for your topic was this Home Assistant thing popped up, and I've been a Home Assistant user for several years now, and I've never noticed this in the past, but it's apparently something they do annually. It's called their month of what the heck, and essentially they open up a forum. It looks like this is the third one, by the way, as I'm opening this
Hmm.
this letter here. So they've done it at least twice. They open up a forum and let people just share their what the heck moments with the team, and so it's kind of an outlet where you can be frustrated, but also give feedback on things that might be puzzling you, while also maybe helping people with things that might have been puzzling them that there might be solutions for. Home Assistant is just such a big uh, piece of software in the self-hosted community. They're a thought leader in a number of ways, and I just thought this was really cool to see them doing something like this, kind of like a hey, I'm going to stop, slow down for a second, and make sure I'm still listening to the users. As I get ready to move, even quicker as they head into 2025.
Yeah, this is a really fun thing they do. I'm not a Home Assistant user myself, but I love seeing these pop up, and I love how these developers and products interact with the community like this. And there's a quote in here that says, I want to be able to edit a scene without activating it. I can only edit my sleep scene after everyone goes to sleep or in YAML.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So if you're a Home Assistant user, if you have some gripes or kind of what the heck moments that you've stumbled across in your instance, definitely check this out. Jason, anything from the community stick out to you this week?
Yeah, so earlier I referred to the Azure Virtual Lab service shutting down, and I found a user on Reddit who posted on his GitHub a virtual lab called Virtua Lab that you can spin up on DigitalOcean's infrastructure. It runs jump hosts running Apache Guacamole, and you can spin up as many lab boxes as you want. And he did this for people who want to teach a class, train professionals, run a hackathon, host a hands-on lab, and things like that. And it's a good replacement for the Azure Cloud Lab service.
Yeah, this is interesting. So, can you help me understand? I want to make sure I understand what the use case is for something like this,
Mm-hmm.
because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, is this just like an easy way to spin up a virtual machine that you might not need long term, just can easily
Yeah.
throw away?
Yeah, this is an easy way to set up disposable virtual machines, an entire network of disposable virtual machines. One good use for this, like if you've ever taken like a network course, like for a certification or anything, like a Cisco course or Network Plus, any of those kinds of things, the instructor will usually have some sort of virtual lab you can log into, and the students can mess around and play around with the software and the command line and everything. And then when you're done with the class, you can just destroy it and set it back to back to the beginning for the next class. So it's good for things like that. If you
Hmm.
want to learn, if you want to test some sort of product on an entire network type of situation before you roll it out into production, it's perfect for that. So I think this is a really great thing, and he's got it just you know very easy to set up in DigitalOcean.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. I read on here earlier, I forget where it is. Oh, here it is. Like it sounds like it was used for a hackathon, which I guess
Yeah,
makes sense. You have a
makes
bunch of people
perfect sense.
together, just get something up and ready for everyone to be able to use right away, and then you just tear it all down
Hmm.
afterwards. So that's really cool. The project is very young, just a couple months young. It doesn't have a lot of traction on GitHub yet. So if this is something you're interested, definitely go on, give the repo a star, and support the developer for sure. Um, so I want to wrap it up. There's one more article. I feel like I've talked so much about user interfaces and how much I like good design. So I'm just pivoting at the last minute here. I want to chat about something. I actually just saw this today. Mozilla just updated their logo. They have a new brand. Um, and admittedly, I've never cared much about it. Like I would care more about what Firefox's icon looks like
Hmm.
than their parent company. But I will say I do not like this. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Jason, if you've had time
I
to
did see this
digest it.
earlier today. Yeah.
I don't know what the reception is, the public reception is outside of myself, but it feels like it's a little bit of a step back. So I've praised a lot of good design choices
Hmm.
today, so I'm just gonna try and net that out with maybe one that I'm a little more disappointed in.
I have a interesting relationship with Mozilla, or opinion, I guess. I want to like Firefox, but it doesn't seem like it's the web browser itself, and the web browser technology is a priority for Mozilla right now. And I know other people probably feel the same way. I almost feel like this is an attention grab for the community that loves or used to love Firefox because it looks geeky, looks
Mm.
geeky like a terminal. I feel like they're trying hard to reach out to those kind of people who would be the primary user base for Firefox.
And those are probably also the same people who are going to buy the new OpenWrt router because it
Exactly.
shares a blue similar to their old router that they had when they were in college
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
years
I
ago.
don't know how well this is going to work though. So
Yeah. So cool. All right. Well, with that being said, Jason, thanks a bunch for joining me. Super glad to have had you on here.
yeah, thank you for having me.
Love the insight about the Fediverse. If people want to connect with you after this, do you have any links that we can give them? I'm happy to throw them in the description, the video description below.
Yeah, you can primarily find me on Mastodon. It's dmv.community/@jcrabapple. And you can go to my about page there, and I've got all my links to my other platforms, my blogs, my Signal, so you can message me on Signal. But yeah, that's everything's there.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again for joining me, and thanks everyone for listening and watching. Happy self hosting.
Thank you.